There. We're live.
Hey.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi.
Ho.
Mm.
Oh.
We haven't left.
You've been sitting here this whole time.
And just clothes fell on us. Or birds dressed us. I know.
My dream!
That would be such a good, I don't know how I could make that happen.
I think it's adorable that you think you could. Because
If one day as a present is like, I found you a bird that knows how to put on sweaters.
one bird.
Just one in the whole world.
It'd be like, it'd be such a heavy sweater.
It would be a really light, nice polyester blend.
Mm.
You know? Like a yoga sweater that isn't really a sweater. It's more like a shirt.
Do I own any of these?
I'm sure you do. And they're like floated above. Maybe we need two, right?
100%.
Because the whole thing is like coordination. And they go, and then you put your arms up.
like so.
And then the birds drop the sweater down.
And it just perfectly falls.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't wait. I can't wait. So it's gotta be now.
Okay.
It's gotta be now.
Well, funny you should ask, because guess who's outside? Ah! No.
It's happening. It's not happening. You want to do a recap?
Yeah, okay. So,
In case you just missed.
yeah. We're reading War and Peace. And we got to chapter 16 of book 1.
Which sounds like a lot more than it actually is.
It sounds impressive.
Yeah.
Sounds like we finished the thing. We did not.
No.
And what happened? What has happened so far? We've gotten a lot of gossip. There's been a lot of parties.
I think it's pre-carnage. It's pre-carnage.
Yeah, it's like we're getting the lay of the land. There's a lot of things with Napoleon and Bonaparte.
There's a hell of a lot of characters.
There are.
Are there? Because I feel like that, but I didn't know if I was just...
Yeah. There are a lot of characters. Who do we remember? So, okay, we were just talking about this. We think that apparently the main character is Pierre, who we met, who's very stout. It's a very important characteristic to remember about him. He's stout and he's politically incorrect. He was at a party and put his foot in his mouth.
As usual.
Pierre. Classic Pierre.
Classic.
Where he
Pierre.
was saying, what was he saying? He was really for Napoleon. Thought he was a great dude. And everyone was like, how can you?
How could you?
Yes.
Who else was there?
And then we have Natasha.
Princesses galore.
So many princesses. And princesses are, I mean, obviously, they're not all young. That's what I found out yesterday.
Oh!
Wow. Who knew?
There are more princesses in the first 15 chapters of War and Peace than there are cruise ships.
If there's a female character, chances are she's a princess.
Natasha.
Yeah. Who is 12?
Is she?
Yes. Very
I should
questionable.
have done a recap before we did this recap.
Very questionable scene where Natasha and Boris have a secret kiss. But we're not exactly sure how old Boris is. So he's old enough to join the army.
He's old enough to join the army. Maybe he's like 60.
Maybe.
That could be.
Yeah. It's 1805.
It's 1805.
It's very Romeo and Juliet. I mean, I'm just thinking of that age difference.
Oh, okay. I was like...
No, because Juliet is 12 when we meet her, right? 13?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Romeo is 17.
It's just disgusting.
Yeah. Ugh. And to Boris's credit, he's like, hey.
I can't.
I cannot. I must wait till you are of age and we can get married. And he's like, so 4 years. That's
And
good, right?
we can't kiss until then.
Yeah.
Until we're married.
Such restraint.
So much
Who knew? The Russians.
Russian restraint. I feel like Tolstoy also likes alliteration, especially with P's.
Really?
Yes, I almost said something yesterday, and then I thought, you've said enough stupid shit for one day. Never enough.
More.
Be careful.
More. What are we doing if we're not saying stupid things?
You're
What are we
right.
doing?
You're right.
What would Pierre do?
WWPD. I don't know. I don't know him very well, frankly.
I have.
Oh, he would
more
say
about-
stupid shit.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Oh, he's so.
That's what I mean.
So astute.
I was like, go on a tangent for 5 hours about alliterations if that's what you need to do.
It is, but I need a party for it. Hot mic.
What else happened? There was a bear. That's very important.
There was animal abuse.
Pierre is staying at a party house. Lots of people getting drunk, and there's a
That's
little
almost
bear.
exactly like a cat.
It's a
house.
baby bear that's very important because there's like one passage where is it Pierre who picks him up?
Yeah, but he's stout, so it could have been like a medium bear.
That's true. He might be very strong, and I think he has glasses as well.
He does.
It's important, really important.
He goes through all these like detailed descriptions of what people look like, and really all I got is glosses and upper lips.
Yeah, lots of upper lips, and women are
Handsome.
No, we don't like her.
Vera
Everyone else is exquisite.
is almost offensively beautiful.
It's like a glass of milk. That's what I think.
Really?
Yeah, it's like, it's so beautiful that they're ashamed of how beautiful they are.
And they're trying to hide it, but they can't.
It's undeniable. Such a burden.
It's nauseating.
Who else? Who are the other characters? So we have Helen. I don't know if
Anna
these people are
Mikhalovna.
gonna. Yes, she's heavily featured.
She's what's his face's mother.
Boris.
Correct.
So she has this whole thing with Prince Vasily, and
Boris and Pierre just met, and they're like BFFs.
oh yeah, they're in love,
right?
Yeah. I don't know why. I didn't really understand why all of a sudden Boris was like, "You are my man."
Yeah, it was about the dying heir. I mean, not the heir, the count.
Oh yeah. Wait. Pierre's father
Yes,
is dying, but he won't see him. Very tragic.
because he's a bastard and he's in a corpse.
Yeah. What is it with bastard sons? We really like them, don't we?
We
By we, I mean like the general public really wants to see a bastard son win.
win.
Yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause in general, I don't think that we like them because
We really like bastards.
we don't like them. They're illegitimate.
Yeah.
Hi, Janessa.
Hi. Great. Hey. Hey, Tiffany. I hope you like Tolstoy.
Why else would she be here?
I don't know why else you would be here.
Just kidding for Janessa. Janessa. When he says Janessa. Janessa. What Janessa? What Janessa? She's right.
What else? I think that's pretty much it. The Count is dying.
Yes, and he's got a lot of money to leave to somebody.
Oh, that's right.
And Boris's mother is like angling for it, for some.
Yeah.
But then he goes in there and is like, listen, and I couldn't tell how authentic he was. But he says to Pierre, like, everybody's angling for the money, clearly, and we are 100% not here for that, except they 100% are. Or maybe she is and he isn't. I don't know. I didn't know if that was authentic.
I didn't know either. The mother was very upset at the end.
No, it was a lie.
Yeah, but she's a great actress, though.
No, I mean, him, sorry, I'm still trying to figure out why Pierre loved
I don't remember.
Paris.
He was just very honest, I think. I don't know.
No,
what
he
it
was the opposite of honest because he's like, we aren't here to ask for anything from you.
That's why he liked him?
I don't
Why
know. I'm
would
trying to figure it out.
Boris would have said that, and then Pierre would have been like, I like you. But I feel like it was the opposite.
What do you mean? Opposite.
Why do I think it was Boris who was like, Pierre, you're my guy? Was it the opposite?
Maybe it was mute.
They're chummy.
Maybe the feeling was mute.
I think there's a love triangle brewing.
Uh-oh. Where?
Yeah.
Where?
Between Natasha, Boris,
And Pierre?
I think so. That's what I think. That's what I suspect.
You know what she's basing this on?
Apparently into things before. Who knew?
Who
Who would think to do such a thing?
I don't know.
Lily James played Natasha.
Well then.
Wow. Imagine. All right, guys.
All right, guys. It was fun being here. I'm gonna go vibe. Go vibe?
Okay.
Not sure what that means.
Goodbye.
Okay.
Thanks for hanging out. And please.
Okay. Should we do this?
Yeah, let's do it. Chapter 17.
Why does it say chapter 8 here? Oh, because I'm on the wrong chapter. Sorry, what is it?
17.
Okay. Got it. Got it. Chapter 17.
Mm-hmm.
After Anna Mikhailovna had driven off with her son to visit Count Cyril Vladimirovich Bezhukov, Countess Rostova sat for a long time all alone, applying her handkerchief to her eyes. At last she rang.
What is the matter with you, my dear? She said crossly to the maid, who kept her waiting some minutes. Don't you wish to serve me? Then I'll find you another place.
The Countess was upset by her friend's sorrow and humiliating poverty, and was therefore out of sorts, a state of mind which with her always found expression in calling her maid my dear and speaking to her with exaggerated politeness.
I'm very sorry, ma'am, answered the maid.
Ask the Count to come to me.
The Count came waddling in to see his wife with a rather guilty look as usual.
Well, little Countess, what a sortie.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, game, oh, madère. What do you think that means?
Madame.
We are to have, my dear. I don't know. Oh, he literally meant saute. I tasted it. The 1,000 rubles I paid for Taras were not ill spent. He is worth it.
Oh, I think Taras was the chef.
Yeah.
He sat down by his wife, his elbows on his knees and his hands ruffling his gray hair.
What are your commands, little Countess?
You see, my dear? What's that mess? She said, pointing to his waistcoat. It's a sauté, most likely, she added with a smile. Well, you see, Count, I want some money.
Her face became sad.
Oh, little Countess, and the Count began bustling to get out his pocketbook.
I want a great deal, Count. I want 500 rubles. And taking out her cambric handkerchief, she began wiping her husband's waistcoat.
Yes, immediately. Hey, who's there? He called out in a tone only used by persons who are certain that those they call will rush to obey the summons. Send Dmitri to me.
Dmitri, a man of good family who had been brought up in the Count's house and now managed all his affairs, stepped softly into the room.
This is what I want, my dear fellow, said the Count to the deferential young man who had entered. Bring me, he reflected a moment, yes, bring me 700 rubles.
Hello?
Yes, 700. But mind, don't bring me such tattered and dirty notes as last time, but nice clean ones for the Countess.
Yes, Dmitri, clean ones, please, said the Countess, sighing deeply.
Well, would you like them, Your Excellency? Asked Dmitri. Allow me to inform you. But don't be uneasy, he added, noticing that the Count was beginning to breathe heavily and quickly, which was always a sign of approaching anger. I was forgetting, do you wish it brought at once?
Yes, just so, bring it. give it to the Countess.
What a treasure, that Demetrius, added the Count with a smile, when the young man had departed. There is never any impossible with him. That's a thing I hate. Everything is possible.
Ah, money, Count, money! How much sorrow it causes in the world, said the Countess. But I am in great need of this sum.
You, my little Countess, are a notorious spendthrift, said the Count. And having kissed his wife's hand, he went back to his study.
When Anna Mikhailovna returned from Count Bezhukov's, the money, all in clean notes, was lying ready under a handkerchief on the Countess's little table, and Anna Mikhailovna noticed that something was agitating her.
Well, my dear, asked the Countess.
Oh, what a terrible state he is in. One would not know him, he is so ill. I was only there a few moments and hardly said a word.
Annette, for heaven's sakes, don't refuse me, the Countess began, with a blush that looked very strange on her thin, dignified, elderly face, and she took the money from under the handkerchief.
Anna Mikhailovna instantly guessed her intention and stooped to be ready to embrace the Countess. At this, Anna Mikhailovna was already embracing her and weeping. The Countess wept too. They wept because they were friends, and because they were kind-hearted, and because they, friends from childhood, had to think about such a base thing as money, and because their youth was over. But those tears were pleasant to them both.
They're just crying in general.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Life.
Hello. So, money.
Their youth was over.
They're just like crap. And because...
Who the devil is the Countess?
I don't... Anna
Mikhailovna.
I thought she was
Anna Mikhailovna was Boris's mother.
There might be two. They might be multiplying.
What do you mean?
Who? There might be two Anna Mikhailovnas?
No. I think Anna Mikhailovna is the one with no money.
Countess Rostova. That's who. I know. Y'all were confused.
Yeah, you guys were so confused.
So the Countess gave her some money. Thanks, Countess.
Like, why did she even have to go over to the other guy's house then?
I don't know. Why'd she bother doing it? I think there's just a way that you go about doing things.
You think?
Yes. Yeah, society.
Never heard of this thing.
Chapter 18. Countess Rostova, with her daughters and a large number of guests, was already seated in the drawing room. The Count took the gentlemen into his study and showed them his choice collection of Turkish pipes.
Ooh!
From time to time, he went out to ask, "Hasn't she come yet?" They were expecting Maria Dmitrievna Akrosimova, known in society as Le Terrible Dragon, a lady distinguished not for wealth or rank, but for common sense and frank plainness of speech. Maria Dmitrievna was known to the imperial family as well as to all Moscow and Petersburg, and both cities wondered at her, laughed privately at her rudenesses, and told good stories about her, while nonetheless all, without exception, respected and feared her.
In the Count's room, which was full of tobacco smoke, they talked of war that had been announced in the manifesto, and about, see, there you go, there's your war.
No.
You were wanting more war yesterday.
Yes, but I want the war, not the talk about war.
Okay, but it's like, now it's happening. Any minute. Any book now. They talked of war that had been announced in a manifesto and about the recruiting. None of them had yet seen the manifesto, but they all knew it had appeared. The Count sat on the sofa between two guests who were smoking and talking. He neither smoked nor talked, but bending his head first to one side and then to the other, watched the smokers with evident pleasure and listened to the conversation of his two neighbors with whom he egged on against each other.
One of them was a sallow, clean-shaven civilian with a thin and wrinkled face, already growing old, though he was dressed like a most fashionable young man. He sat with his legs up on the sofa, as if quite at home, and, having stuck an amber mouthpiece far into his mouth, was inhaling the smoke spasmodically and screwing up his eyes. This was an old bachelor, Shinshin, a cousin of the Countess's, a man with a sharp tongue, as they said in Moscow society. He seemed to be condescending to his companion. The latter, a fresh, rosy officer of the guards, irreproachably washed, brushed, and buttoned, held his pipe in the middle of his mouth and with red lips gently inhaled the smoke, letting it escape from his handsome mouth in rings. This was Lieutenant Berg, an officer in the Semenov regiment with whom Boris was to travel to join the army, and about whom Natasha had teased her elder sister Vera, speaking of Berg as her intended. The Count sat between them and listened attentively. His favorite occupation when not playing Boston, a card game he was very fond of, was that of listener, especially when he succeeded in setting two loquacious talkers at one another.
Well then, old chap, mon très honorable Alphonse Karlovitch, said Shinshin, laughing ironically, for some reason, and mixing the most ordinary Russian expressions with the choicest French phrases, which was a peculiarity of his speech. Vous comptez-vous faire des... what?
Right.
Rente sur l'État.
You expect to make an income out of the government.
You want to make something out of your company. 1, 2.
I lost. Keep going.
No, Peter Nikolavich. I only want to show that in the cavalry the advantages are far less than in the infantry. Just consider my own position now, Peter Nikolavich.
Berg always spoke quietly, politely, and with great precision. His conversation was always related entirely to himself. He would remain calm and silent when the talk related to any topic that had no direct bearing on himself. He could remain silent for hours without being at all put out of countenance himself, or making others uncomfortable. But as soon as the conversation concerned himself, he would begin to talk circumstance satisfaction.
Consider my position, Peter Nikolaevich. Were I in the cavalry, I should get not more than 200 rubles every 4 months, even with the rank of lieutenant. But as it is, I receive 230, said he, looking at Shinshin and the Count with a joyful, pleasant smile, as if it were obvious to him that his success must always be the chief desire of everyone else.
Besides that, Peter Nikolaevich, by exchanging into the guards, I shall be in a more prominent position, continued Berg. Vacancies occur much more frequently in the foot guards. Then just think what can be done with 230 rubles. I even managed to put a little aside and to send something to my father, he went on, emitting a smoke ring.
La balance est. So that squares matters, is what that means.
Just means there's balance.
A German knows how to skin a flint, as the proverb says, remarked Shinshin, moving his pipe to the other side of his mouth and winking at the Count.
The Count burst out laughing. The other guests, hearing that Shinshin was talking, came up to listen. Berg, oblivious of irony or indifference, continued to explain how by exchanging into the guards he had already gained a step on his old comrades at the cadet corps. How in wartime the company commander might get killed, and he, as senior in the company, might easily succeed to the post. How popular he was with everyone in the regiment, and how satisfied his father was with him. Berg evidently enjoyed narrating all this, and did not seem to suspect that others, too, might have their own interests. But all he said was so prettily sedate, and the naivete of his youthful egotism was so obvious that he disarmed his hearers.
Well, my boy, you'll get along wherever you go. Foot or horse, that I'll warrant, said Shinshin, patting him on the shoulder and taking his feet off the sofa.
Berg smiled joyously. The Count, by his guests, went into the drawing room.
It was just the moment before a big dinner when the assembled guests, expecting the summons to zakuska, which is the hors d'oeuvres, avoid engaging in any long conversation, but think it necessary to move about and talk in order to show that they are not at all impatient about their food. The host and hostess looked towards the door, and now and then glance at one another, and the visitors try to guess from these glances who or what they are waiting for. Some important relation who has not yet arrived, or a dish that is not yet ready.
Pierre had come just at dinner time and was sitting awkwardly in the middle of the drawing room on the first chair he had come across, blocking the way for everyone. Classic Pierre. The Countess tried to make him talk, but he went on naively looking around through his spectacles as if in search of somebody, and answered all her questions in monosyllables. He was in the way, and was the only one who did not notice the fact. Most of the guests, knowing of the affair with the bear, looked with curiosity at this big, stout, quiet man, wondering how such a clumsy, modest fellow could have played such a prank on a policeman. Should we jump in? There was a prank where he tied a bear to a policeman in the river.
I like how that's the part that you feel the need to get.
I'm like, that's the part everyone needs to understand.
We must recap this.
There's a bear. I think both parties were okay. I think.
One doesn't know about the policeman. Because bears can swim.
Right.
Oh, they got put in the water. Are we satisfied?
I think we're good.
Okay. You have only lately arrived? The Countess asked him.
Oui, madame, replied he, looking around him.
You have not yet seen my husband?
No, madame. He smiled quite inappropriately.
Jeez, Pierre. You have been in Paris recently, I believe. I suppose it's very interesting.
Very interesting.
The Countess exchanged glances with Anna Mikhailovna. The latter understood that she was being asked to entertain this young man, and sitting down beside him, she began to speak about his father. But he answered her as he had the Countess, only in monosyllables. The other guests were all conversing. Oh, it was charming. You are a very kind Countess. Apraxina was always the topic of conversation. Apraxina was heard on all sides. The Countess rose and went into the ballroom.
Maria Dmitrievna, came her voice from there. Herself, came the answer in a rough voice, and Maria Dmitrievna entered the room.
Is this a freaking another Maria?
Who's the other Maria?
I just don't know.
I don't think we've met her.
Okay, we've seen the name at least 75 times.
And there's not a lot of names to go around. Hard times.
She's crazy because there's so many syllables. They have to just keep repeating the multiple syllable names.
That's why. Because I think everyone has the same name. So then they have to add all these like long things onto it.
Oh,
otherwise, it's
I had
like
a chicken
Anna,
and egg.
Maria. Anna and Maria.
Right. I buy it. I've bought that. All the unmarried, is that what it is?
Yeah.
All the unmarried ladies, and even the married ones, except the very oldest Rose. Maria, how do you say it? Do you think it's Maria or Maria?
You decided I will go with it.
Maria Dmitrievna paused at the door. Tall. Oh, I hear something.
I'm pretty sure that song just follows her wherever she goes.
She was tall and stout. Surprise, surprise.
Tall and stout. Wait, maybe I don't understand the meaning of stout.
Stout means
is
like
thick?
barrel shaped.
Okay.
Thick, yes. Like a brick. Holding high her 50-year-old head with its grey curls, she stood, surveying the guests, and leisurely arranged her wide sleeves as if rolling them up. Maria Dmitrievna always spoke in Russian.
Health and happiness to her whose name day we are keeping unto her children, she said in her loud, full-toned voice which drowned all others. Well, you old sinner, she went on, turning to the Count, who was kissing her hand, you're feeling dull in Moscow, I dare say. Nowhere to hunt with your dogs. But what is to be done, old man? Just see how these nestlings are growing up. And she pointed to the girls. You must look for your husbands for them, whether you like it or not.
Well, said she, how's my Cossack? Maria Dmitrievna always called Natasha a Cossack. And she stroked the child's arm as she came up fearless and gay to kiss her hand. I know she's a scamp of a girl, but I like her.
She took a pair of pear-shaped ruby earrings from her huge reticule, and having given them to the rosy Natasha, who beamed with the pleasure of her Saint's Day fete, turned away at once and addressed herself to Pierre.
Hey, friend, come here a bit, said she, assuming a soft, high, tone of voice. Hey, friend, come here a bit, said she, assuming a high, soft tone of voice. Come here, my friend, and she ominously tucked up her sleeves still higher. Pierre approached, looking at her in a childlike way through his spectacles.
Come nearer, friend. I used to be the only one to tell your father the truth when he was in favor, and in your case, it's my evident duty." She paused. All were silent, expectant of what was to follow, for this was clearly only a prelude.
"A fine lad, my word, a fine lad. His father lies on his deathbed and he amuses himself setting a policeman astride a bear. For shame, sir, for shame. It would be better if you went to the war."
She turned away and gave her hand to the Count, who could hardly keep from laughing.
"Well, I suppose it is time we were at table," said Maria Dmitrievna.
The Count went in first with Maria Dmitrievna. The Countess followed on the arm of a colonel of hussars, and that of Nicholas was to go with him to the regiment. Then came Anna Mikhailovna with Shinshin. Berg gave his arm to Vera. The smiling Julie Karagina went in with Nicholas. After them, other couples followed, filling the whole dining hall. Whose birthday is it, by the way?
The grandmother and the little girl. Natasha and it's the same damn birthday party from
before?
Yeah, okay. Seems like it.
After them, other tutors and governesses followed singly. The footmen began moving about, chairs scraped, the band struck up in the gallery, and the guests settled down in their places. Then the strains of the Count's household band were replaced by the clatter of knives and forks, the voices of visitors, and the soft steps of the footmen. At one end of the table sat the Countess with Maria Dmitrievna on her right and Anna Mikhailovna on her left. The other lady visitors were further down. At the other end sat the Count, with the Tsar Colonel on his left and Shinshin and the other male visitors on his right. Midway down the long table on one side sat the grown-up young people, Vera beside Berg and Pierre beside Boris, and on the other side the children, tutors, and governesses. From behind the crystal decanters and fruit vases, the Count kept glancing at his wife and her tall cap with its light blue ribbons, and busily filled his neighbor's glasses, not neglecting his own. The Countess, in turn, without omitting her duties as hostess, threw significant glances from behind the pineapples at her husband, whose face and bald head seemed by their redness to contrast more than usual with his gray hair. At the ladies' end, an even chatter of voices was heard all the time. At the men's end, the voices sounded louder and louder, especially that of the Colonel of Hussars, who, growing more and more flushed, ate and drank so much that the Count held him up as a pattern to the other guests. Berg, with tender smiles, was saying to Vera that love is not an earthly, but a heavenly feeling. Boris was telling his new friend Pierre who the guests were, and exchanging glances with Natasha, who was sitting opposite. Pierre spoke little, but examined the new faces and ate a great deal. Of the two soups, he chose turtle, with savory and went on to the game without omitting a single dish or one of the wines. These latter the butler thrust mysteriously forward, wrapped in a napkin, from behind the next man's shoulders, and whispered, "Dry Madeira, Hungarian, or Rhine wine," as the case might be. Of the 4 crystal glasses engraved with the Count's monogram that stood before his plate, Pierre held out one at random and drank with enjoyment, gazing with ever-increasing amiability at the other guests. Natasha, who sat opposite, was looking at Boris as girls of 13 look at the boy they are in love with and have just kissed for the first time. Sometimes that same look fell on Pierre, and that funny, lively little girl's look made him inclined to laugh without knowing why.
Nicholas sat at some distance from Sonia, beside Julie Karagina, to whom he was again talking with the same involuntary smile. Sonia wore a company smile, but was evidently tormented by jealousy. Now she turned pale, now blushed, and strained every nerve to overhear what Nicholas and Julie were saying to one another. The governess kept looking around uneasily, as if preparing to resent any slight that might be put upon the children. The German tutor was trying to remember all the dishes, wines, and kinds of dessert in order to send a full description of the dinner to his people in Germany, and he felt greatly offended when the butler with a bottle wrapped in a napkin passed him by. He frowned, trying to appear as if he did not want any of that wine, but was mortified because no one would understand that it was not to quench his thirst or from greediness that he wanted it, but simply from a conscientious desire for knowledge. Cool. I like it. Thank you.
At the men's end of the table, the talk grew more and more animated. The colonel told them that the declaration of war had already appeared in Petersburg and that a copy, which he had himself seen, had that day been forwarded by courier to the commander-in-chief.
And why the deuce are we going to fight Bonaparte? Remarked Shinshin. He has stopped Austria's cackle, and I fear it will be our turn next.
The colonel was a stout, again, tall, plethoric German, evidently devoted to the service and patriotically Russian. He resented Shinshin's remark.
It is for the reason, my good sir, said he, speaking with a German accent, obviously. For the reason that the emperor knows that. He declares in the manifestos that he cannot feel?
Yes.
He cannot feel
Phew.
with indifference. Oh, wait, what? Feel with indifference the nature of threatening Russia, and that the safety and dignity of the empire, as well as the sanctity of its alliances. He spoke this last word with particular emphasis, as if in it lay the gist of the matter. Good Lord.
Then, with the unerring official memory that characterized him, he repeated from the opening words of the manifesto.
And the wish, which constitutes the emperor's sole and absolute aim to establish peace in Europe on firm foundations, has now decided to dispatch part of the army abroad and to create a new condition for the attainment of that purpose.
That, my dear sir, is why, he concluded, drinking a tumbler of wine with dignity and looking to the count for approval.
Connaissez-vous le proverbe? Which means, do you know the proverb? Jerome, do not roam, but turn spindles at home, said Shinshin, puckering his brows.
I do
smiling.
know that proverb. What is it?
You know, Jerome,
Do not
Jerome,
roam,
but turn spindles at home.
No, relevant.
Cela nous convient à merveille. Suvorov now.
That suits us down to the ground.
Okay, this is confusing. Suvorov now. He knew what he was about, yet they beat him a plate couture. And where are we to find Suvorovs now? Je vous demande un peu, said he, continually changing from French to Russian.
We must fight to the last drop of our blood, said the colonel, thumping the table. And we must tie for our emperor. And then all will be well. And we must discuss it as little as possible. He dwelt particularly on the last word, possible. As possible, he ended, again turning to the count. That is how we old hussars look at it, and there's an end of it. And how do you, a young man and a young hussar, how do you judge of it? He added, addressing Nicholas, who, when he heard that the war was being discussed, had turned from his partner with eyes and ears intent on the colonel. I am quite of your opinion, replied Nicholas, flaming up, turning his plate round and moving his wine glass about with as much decision and desperation as though he were at that moment facing some great danger. I am convinced that we Russians must die or conquer. He concluded, conscious, as were others, after the words were uttered, that his remarks were too enthusiastic and emphatic for the occasion, and were therefore awkward. What you said just now was splendid, said his partner, Julie. Guess not. Was that awkward? No, it was splendid. I think they really appreciate awkwardness in the society. Agree. Sonia trembled all over and blushed. Oh, because Julie's not his partner. Oh, hey. Just his dining partner. Excuse me, Julie.
Sonia trembled all over and blushed to her ears and behind them and down to her neck and shoulders while Nicholas was speaking.
Pierre listened to the colonel's speech and nodded approvingly.
That's fine, said he.
The young man's a real hussar, shouted the colonel, again thumping the table.
What are you making such a noise about over there? Maria Dmitrievna's deep voice suddenly inquired from the other end of the table. What are you thumping the table for? She demanded of the hussar. And why are you exciting yourself? Do you think the French are here?
I'm speaking the truth, replied the hussar with a smile.
It's all about the war, the count shouted down the table. You know my son's going, Maria Dmitrievna. My son is going.
I have 4 sons in the army, but still I don't fret. It is all in God's hands. You may die on your bed, or God may spare you in battle, replied Maria Dmitrievna's deep voice, which easily carried the whole length of the table.
That's true.
Once more the conversations concentrated, the ladies at the one end and the men's at the other.
You won't ask, Natasha's little brother was saying. I know you won't ask.
I will, replied Natasha.
Her face suddenly flushed with reckless and joyous resolution. She half rose, by a glance inviting Pierre, who sat opposite, to listen to what was coming, and turning to her mother.
Mamma, rang out the clear contralto notes of her childish voice, audible the whole length of the table.
What is it? Asked the countess, startled, but seeing by her daughter's face that it was only movement of her head.
The conversation was hushed.
Mama, what sweets are we going to have? And Natasha's voice sounded still more firm and resolute.
The countess tried to frown, but could not. Maria Dmitrievna shook her fat finger.
Cossack, she said threateningly.
What does Cossack mean?
It's
an insult, right? Cossack.
Yeah.
Cool. Most of the guests, uncertain how to regard this sally, looked at the elders.
Sally?
What a sally.
What a sally this is. You had better take care, said the countess.
Mamma, what sweets are we going to have? Natasha again cried boldly, with saucy gaiety, confident that her prank would be taken in good part.
Sonia and fat little Petya doubled up with laughter.
You see, I have asked, whispered Natasha to her little brother and to Pierre, glancing at him again.
Ice pudding, but you won't get any, said Maria Dmitrievna.
Natasha saw there was nothing to be afraid of, and so she braved even Maria Dmitrievna.
Maria Dmitrievna, what kind of ice pudding? I don't like ice cream.
Carrot ices.
No. What kind, Maria Dmitrievna? What kind? She almost screamed. I want to know.
Maria Dmitrievna and the countess burst out laughing, and all the guests joined in. Everyone laughed, not at Maria Dmitrievna's answer, but at the incredible boldness and smartness of this little girl who had dared to treat Maria Dmitrievna in this fashion.
I'm confused. Natasha only desisted when she had been told.
What's a carrot ice? I want to try this.
I think it's carrot flavored.
Carrot flavored
Ice cream.
Ice cream? Carrot ice cream.
I think so.
Delicious.
Carrots are very sweet.
Actually, that might not be bad.
Yeah, my favorite Indian dessert is mostly carrot.
Really?
Yeah, it's really good. Okay.
I feel like salt and straw needs to get on this.
Needs to get on this, or you feel like you want salt and straw? Needs to get on this. Natasha only desisted when she had been told that there would be pineapple ice. Before the ices, champagne was served round. The band again struck up, the count and countess kissed, and the guests, leaving their seats, went up to congratulate the countess, and reached across the table to clink glasses with the count, with the children, and with one another. Again the footmen rushed about, chairs scraped, and in the same order in which they had entered, but with redder faces, the guests returned to the drawing-room and to the count's study.
Chapter 20. The card tables were drawn out, sets made up for Boston, and the Count's visitors settled themselves, some in the 2 drawing rooms, some in the sitting room, some in the library.
The Count, holding his cards fan-wise, kept himself with difficulty from dropping into his usual after-dinner nap and laughed at everything. The young people, at the Countess's instigation, gathered around the clavichord and harp. Julie, by general request, played first. After she had played a little, air with variations on the harp, she joined the other young ladies in begging Natasha and Nicholas, who were noted for their musical talent, to sing something. Natasha, who was treated as though she were grown up, was evidently very proud of this, but at the same time felt shy.
"What shall we sing?" she said.
Suggested Nicholas.
"Well then, let's be quick. Boris, come here," said Natasha. "But where's Sonia?"
She looked around and, seeing that her friend was not in the room, ran to look for her.
Running into Sonia's room and not finding her there, Natasha ran to the nursery. But Sonia was not there either. Natasha concluded that she must be on the chest in the passage. The chest in the passage was the place of mourning for the younger female generation in the Rostov household.
Dear Lord.
And there, in fact, was Sonia, lying face downward on Nurse's dirty feather bed, on the top of the chest, crumpling her gauzy pink dress under her, hiding her face with her slender fingers, and sobbing so convulsively that her bare little shoulders shook. Natasha's face, which had been so radiantly happy all that saint's day, suddenly changed. Her eyes became fixed, and then a shiver passed down her broad neck, and the corners of her mouth drooped.
Sonia, what is it? What is the matter? Oh, and Natasha's large mouth widened, making her look quite ugly, and she began to wail like a baby without knowing why, except that Sonia was crying. Sonia tried to lift her head to answer, but could not, and hid her face still deeper in the bed. Natasha wept, sitting on the blue striped feather bed, with a began wiping her eyes and explained.
"Nicholas is going away in a week's time. His papers have come, he told me himself, but still I should not cry." And she showed a paper she held in her hand, with the verses Nicholas had written. "Still I should not cry, but you can't. No one can understand what a soul he has."
And she began to cry again, because he had such a noble soul.
Such a noble soul. "It's all very well for you. I am not envious. I love you, and Boris also," she went on, gaining a little strength. "He is nice. There are no difficulties in your way. But Nicholas is my cousin." Okay. One would have to. The Metropolitan himself, and even then it can't be done. And besides, if she tells Mama, Sonia looked upon the Countess as her mother and called her so, that I am spoiling Nicholas's career and am heartless and ungrateful, while truly God is my witness. And she made the sign of the cross. I love her so much, and all of you, only Vera. And what for? What have I done to her? I am so grateful to you, and I would willingly sacrifice everything, only I have nothing.
Sonia could not continue, and again hid her face in her hands and in the feather bed. Natasha began consoling her, but her face showed that she understood all the gravity of her friend's trouble.
"Sonia," she suddenly exclaimed, as if she had guessed the true reason of her friend's sorrow. "I'm sure Vera has said something to you since dinner, hasn't she?"
"Yes. These verses Nicholas wrote himself, and I copied some others, and she found them on my table and said she'd show them to Mama, and that I was ungrateful, and that Mama would never allow him to marry me, but that he'll marry Julie. You see how he's been with her all day. Natasha, what have I done to deserve it?"
And again she began to sob, more bitterly than before. Natasha lifted her up, hugged her, and smiling through her tears, began comforting her.
"Sonia, don't you believe her, darling. Don't believe her. Do you remember how we and Nicholas, all three of us, talked in the sitting room after supper? Why, we settled how everything was to be. I don't quite remember how, but don't you remember that it could all be arranged, and how nice it all was? There's Uncle Shinshin's brother has married his first cousin, and we are only second cousins, you know. And Boris says it is quite possible. You know, I have told him all about it. And he's so clever and so good," said Natasha. "Don't you cry, Sonia, dear love, darling Sonia." And she kissed her and laughed. "Vera is spiteful. Never mind her. And all will come right, and she won't say anything to Mama. Nicholas will tell her himself. And he doesn't care at all for Julie."
Natasha kissed her on the hair.
Sonia sat up. The little kitten brightened, its eyes shone, and it seemed ready to lift its tail, jump down on its soft paws, and begin playing with the ball of worsted as a kitten should.
"Do you think so? Really? Truly?" she said, quickly smoothing her frock and hair.
"Really, truly," answered Natasha, pushing in a crisp lock that had strayed from under her friend's plaits.
Both laughed.
Well, let's go and sing the brook.
Come along.
Do you know that fat Pierre who sat opposite me is so funny, said Natasha, stopping suddenly. I feel so happy.
And she set off at a run along the passage.
Sonia, shaking off some down which clung to her and tucking away the verses in the bosom of her dress close to her bony little chest, ran after Natasha down the passage into the sitting room with flushed face and light, joyous steps. At the visitor's request, the young people sang the quartet, The Brook, with which everyone was delighted. Then Nicholas sang a song he had just learned.
At nighttime in the moon's... Oh, this is the song.
This is the song.
Oh, yeah? Okay. At nighttime, in the moon's fair glow, how sweet as fancy wander free. No.
I never understand the point of this.
To feel that in this world there's one who still is thinking but of thee.
That while her fingers touch the harp, wafting sweet music o'er the lay? Lee. It's Lee for thee.
Does it rhyme?
It is for thee thus swells her heart, sighing its message out to thee.
A day or two, then bliss unspoilt, but oh, till then I cannot live.
He had not finished the last verse before the young people began to get ready to dance in the large hall, and the sound of the feet and the coughing of the musicians were heard from the gallery.
Pierre was sitting in the drawing room, where Shinshin had engaged him as a man abroad, a conversation in which several others joined, which bored Pierre. When the music began, Natasha came in and, walking straight up to Pierre, said, laughing and blushing,
Mama told me to ask you to join the dancers.
I am afraid of mixing the figures, Pierre replied, but if you will be my teacher... And lowering his big arm, he offered it to the slender little girl.
While the couples were arranging themselves and the musicians tuning up, Pierre sat down with his little partner. Natasha was perfectly happy. She was dancing with a grown-up man who had been abroad. She was sitting in a conspicuous place and talking to him like a grown-up lady. She had a fan in her hand that one of the ladies had given her to hold. Assuming quite the pose of a society woman, heaven knows when and where she had learned it, she talked with her partner, fanning herself and smiling over the fan.
Dear, just look at her, exclaimed the Countess as she crossed the ballroom, pointing to Natasha.
Natasha blushed and laughed.
Well, really, Mama, why should you? What is there to be surprised at?
In the midst of the third écossaise, there was a clatter of chairs being pushed back in the sitting room where the Count and Maria Dmitrievna had been playing cards with the majority of the more distinguished and older visitors. They now, stretching themselves after sitting so long and replacing their purses and pocketbooks, entered the ballroom. First came Maria Dmitrievna and the Count, both with merry countenances. The Count, with playful ceremony, somewhat in ballet style, offered his bent arm to Maria Dmitrievna. He drew himself up, a smile of debonair gallantry lit up his face, and as soon as the last figure of the écossaise was ended, he clapped his hands to the musicians and shouted up to their gallery, addressing the first violin.
Do I have to? Seaman! Do you know the Daniel Cooper?
This Seaman, the Daniel Cooper.
Is that his name? That's the first violin's name.
Is Seaman.
It might be Seaman.
I think it's Seaman. This was the Count's favorite dance, which he had danced in his youth. Strictly speaking, Daniel Cooper was one figure of the Anglaise.
Look at Papa, shouted Natasha to the whole company. And quite forgetting that she was dancing with a grown-up partner, she bent her curly head to her knees and made the whole room ring with her laughter.
And indeed, everybody in the room looked with a smile of pleasure at the jovial old gentleman who, standing beside his tall and stout partner, Maria Dmitrievna, curved his arms, beat time, straightened his shoulders, turned out his toes, tapped gently with his foot, and by a smile that broadened his round face more and more, prepared the onlookers for what was to follow. As soon as the provocatively gay strains of Daniel Cooper, somewhat resembling those of a merry peasant dance, began to sound, all the doorways of the ballroom were suddenly filled by the domestic serfs. the men on one side and the women on the other, who, with beaming faces, had come to see their master make merry.
Just look at the master. A regular eagle he is, loudly remarked the nurse as she stood in one of the doorways.
The Count danced well, and knew it. But his partner could not, and did not want to dance well, could not, and did not want to dance well. Her enormous figure stood erect, her powerful arms hanging down. She had handed her reticule to the Countess, and only her stern but handsome face really joined in the dance. What was expressed by the whole of the Count's plump figure in Maria Dmitrievna's found expression only in her more and more beaming face and quivering nose. But if the Count, getting more and more into the swing of it, charmed the spectators by the unexpectedness of his adroit maneuvers and the agility with which he capered about on his light feet, Maria Dmitrievna produced no less impression by slight exertions, the least effort to move her shoulders or bend her arms when turning or stamp her foot, which everyone appreciated in view of her size and habitual severity. The dance grew livelier and livelier. The other couples could not attract a moment's attention to their own evolutions and did not even try to do so. All were watching the Count and Maria Dmitrievna. Natasha kept pulling everyone by sleeve or dress, urging them to look at Papa, though as it was, in the intervals of the dance, the Count, breathing shouted to the musicians to play faster, faster, faster and faster, lightly, more lightly, and yet more lightly whirled the Count, flying around Maria Dmitrievna, now on his toes, now on his heels, until, turning his partner round to her seat, he executed the final pass. Raising pass. How do you pronounce it? Pa. Oh, like pa. Ha ha ha. Raising his soft foot backwards, bowing his perspiring head, smiling and making a wide sweep with his arm amid a thunder of applause and laughter led by Natasha. Both partners stood still, breathing heavily and wiping their faces with their cambric handkerchiefs.
That's how we used to dance in our time, ma chère, said the Count.
That was a Daniel Cooper, explained Maria Dmitrievna, tucking up her sleeves and puffing heavily.
What's a Daniel Cooper?
Such a Daniel Cooper.
Who's Daniel Cooper? No, we don't know.
An Anglaisman.
All right. Party.
Another fracking party.
Lots of parties.
Nothing but a party. Life is a party.
I mean, is it really that different from today?
Yes. From today?
Yeah.
Super different from today.
You know, it's like you just go hang out at your friend's house. It's just fancier.
Right. Not today.
Not today.
Right. That's what I meant. That's what I meant by today.
Okay.
Yeah, no. Otherwise, household dance parties.
And instead of like playing Spotify, they're like musicians.
Seaman.
Yeah.
Seaman, look here.
Same. Like people haven't changed.
They haven't. I couldn't quite tell what was impressive about Maria Dmitrievna's dancing.
I think it's that she was very large and not good at it.
But why were people impressed?
Because
she's even more stern. So it's like Maggie Smith, like.
Yeah, I was thinking Maggie Smith. But then apparently she's very large. So
yeah, but like someone who's temperamentally like Maggie Smith.
Right.
So even the smallest expression.
If Maggie Smith cut a rug, I would be impressed.
I bet you she does.
Yeah.
Has.
For some reason, I just picture like finger dancing.
From Maggie Smith?
Yeah, what do you think she does?
Oh, I think she does the Argentine tango.
She puts her whole body in.
Oh, yes. Puts her spine into it.
Yeah, you wouldn't think. She's got curves.
She do. 21. Do we need to take a break for anything? No, because nothing's happened with partying.
Nothing's happened. There's nothing to sum up. It's just they're having a good time. And everyone is
a good
quite
time was
taken.
had by all.
Everyone is quite taken by Natasha. Chapter 21?
Yes.
Okay. While in the Rostovs' ballroom, the sixth Anglaise was being danced, to a tune in which the wary musicians blundered, and while tired footmen and cooks were getting the supper, Count... Oh, so, what do you mean they're getting the supper? Didn't they already eat?
Supper.
Dinner.
First dinner, then supper.
So much. Excusez-moi. Count Bezhukov had a sixth stroke.
Oh, no.
The doctors pronounced recovery impossible. After a mute confession, communion was administered to the dying man, preparations made for the sacrament of unction, and in his house there was the bustle and thrill of suspense usual at such moments. Outside the house, beyond the gates, a group of undertakers who hid whenever a carriage drove up waited an expensive funeral. The military governor of Moscow, who had been assiduous in sending aides-de-camp to inquire after the count's health, came himself that evening to bid a last farewell to the celebrated grandee of Catherine's court, Count Bezhukov.
The magnificent reception room was crowded. Everyone stood up respectfully when the military governor slightly acknowledging bows and trying to escape as quickly as possible from the glances fixed on him by the doctors, clergy, and relatives of the family. Prince Vasily, who had grown thinner and paler during the last few days, escorted him to the door, repeating something to him several times in low tones.
When the military governor had gone, Prince Vasily sat down all alone on a chair in the ballroom, crossing one leg high over the other, leaning his elbow on his knee, and covering his face with his hand. After sitting so for a while, he rose, and, looking about him with frightened eyes, went with unusually hurried steps down a long corridor leading to the back of the house, to the room of the eldest princess.
Those who were in the dimly lit reception room spoke in nervous whispers, and whenever anyone went into or came from the dying man's room, grew silent and gazed with eyes full of curiosity or expectancy at his door, which creaked slightly when opened.
The limits of human life are fixed and may not be overpassed, said an old priest to a lady who had taken a seat beside him and was listening naively to his words.
I wonder, is it not too late to administer unction? Asked the lady, adding the priest's clerical title as if she had no opinion of her own on the subject.
Ah, madame, it is a great sacrament, replied the priest, passing his hand over the thin, grizzled strands of hair combed back across his bald head.
Who was that? The military governor himself? Was being asked at the other side of the room. How young-looking he is.
Yes, and he is over 60. I hear the count no longer recognizes anyone. They wish to administer the sacrament of unction.
I knew someone who received that sacrament 7 times.
Pause. What is the sacrament of unction?
It's the unction sacrament.
What is unction?
You know. Let me look. The action of anointing someone with oil or ointment as a religious rite or as a symbol of investiture as a monarch.
Ah, okay. I know someone who received that sacrament 7 times.
I don't
know
what that means.
Is that like, oh, only fancy people get that much oil? What kind of oil are we talking?
Oily oil.
What kind of oil did they use in 1805? I don't think it was avocado oil.
Like kerosene. It's probably something mad flammable.
Okay, we can continue. The second princess had just come from the sick room with her eyes red from weeping, and sat down beside Dr. Lorraine, who was sitting in a graceful pose under a portrait of Catherine, leaning his elbow on a table.
Beautiful, said the doctor in answer to a remark about the weather. The weather is beautiful, princess, and besides, in Moscow one feels as if one were in the country.
Yes, indeed, replied the princess with a sigh. So he may have something to drink?
Lorraine considered.
Has he taken his medicine?
Yes.
The doctor glanced at his watch.
Take a glass of boiled water and put a pinch of cream of tartar. And he indicated with his delicate fingers what he meant by a pinch.
There has never been a gas, a German doctor was saying to an aide-de-camp, that one lives after the third stroke.
And what a well-preserved man he was, remarked the aide-de-camp. And who will inherit his wealth? He added in a whisper.
That's what we want to know.
That's the whole freaking question.
He won't go begging, replied the German with a smile.
Everyone again looked toward the door, which creaked as the second princess went in with the drink she had prepared according to Lorraine's instructions. The German doctor went up to Lorraine.
Do you think he can last till morning? Asked the German, addressing Lorraine in French, which he pronounced badly.
Lorraine, pursing up his lips, waved a severely negative finger before his nose.
Tonight, not later, said he in a low voice, and he moved away with a decorous smile of self-satisfaction.
Why?
At being able clearly to understand and state the patient's condition.
So he is smiling at his
like,
basic competence? He's
no,
like,
no, you're going to die
tonight. Okay. Meanwhile, Prince Vasily had opened the door into the princess's room. Which bloody princess? There are so many princesses.
Well, I think it's the eldest. It doesn't matter. They're
Does it?
interchangeable.
Does it not? What are their bloody names? I don't remember anything.
Anna I knew it!
Logan.
Michaela. Yes,
She's not a princess.
she's a princess.
She's not a princess. She's
Yeah.
the one, she's Boris's mother.
I know, but she's a princess.
Like, in what sense?
I don't know. In what any sense?
How are the counts and countesses above the princesses? I feel like there are some basic structural questions that we do not have the answers to that, like, anyone who knows anything about this time period in Russian history would know.
I don't actually know who's running things. Like, is there a king?
Like, who
There's an
runs this
emperor?
shit?
There's an emperor.
There's an emperor.
Yeah, it's different in Russia. There's like an emperor and then there's princesses. And princes.
I mean, I got that from this book.
No, I know,
But-
but there's no like king or queen. That's what I mean is the difference.
But then where do the counts and countesses fit in? Because it seems like right now they have more,
They have more clout.
yeah. Where's the clout, you know? Where is located the clout?
It's all in the clout. Wait, I want to make some stupid fun about that.
It's in the clout.
It's probably like who's in line to the throne, in which case the princess is like, who cares?
But wouldn't the maybe I don't know what a princess is. Wouldn't they be higher than
Maybe not.
counts?
Maybe not. Guess what land? I don't know.
Should be.
Next.
Have you read it? No? It's like really good.
Really?
Yeah.
Who's that by?
Alexander Dumbass?
Yeah, I am.
I can't remember. I can't remember. We should not be doing this.
Meanwhile, Prince Vasily had opened the door into the princess's room.
In this room, it was almost dark. Only 2 tiny lamps were burning before the icons, and there was a pleasant scent of flowers and burnt pastilles. The room was crowded with small pieces of furniture, whatnots, cupboards, and little tables. The quilt of a high white feather bed was just visible behind a screen. A small dog began to bark.
Is it you, cousin?
She rose and smoothed her hair, which was, as usual, so extremely smooth that it seemed to be made of one piece with her head and covered in varnish.
Wow, that's maybe the best description of hair I've ever read.
I think she needs to smooth it
It
somewhere.
basically just looks like
A
anime
helmet.
hair.
A helmet.
A shiny helmet. Has anything happened? She asked. I'm so terrified.
No, there is no change. I only came to have a talk about business, Katish.
Ah, she's new, I think.
Catherine.
Right. Well, I think we kind of mentioned her.
Muttered the prince, seating himself wearily on the chair she had just vacated. You have made the place warm, I must say, he remarked. Well, sit down. Let's have a talk.
I thought perhaps something had happened, she said, with her unchanging, stonily severe expression. And sitting down opposite the prince, she prepared to listen.
I wished to get a nap, mon cousin, but I can't.
Well, my dear, said Prince Vasily, taking her hand and bending it downwards as was his habit.
It was plain that this well referred to much that they both understood without naming.
The princess, who had a straight, rigid body, abnormally long for her legs, looked directly at Prince Vasily with no sign of emotion in her prominent gray eyes. Then she shook her head and glanced up at the icons with a sigh. This might have been taken as an expression of sorrow and devotion, or of weariness and hope of resting before long. Prince Vasily understood it as an expression of weariness.
And I, he said, do you think it is easier for me? I am as worn out as a post horse, but still I must have a talk with you, Katisha, very serious talk.
Prince Vasily said no more, and his cheeks began to twitch nervously, now on one side, now on the other, giving his face an unpleasant expression which was never to be seen on it in a drawing room. His eyes, too, seemed strange. At one moment glanced round in alarm.
The princess, holding her little dog on her lap with her thin, bony hands, looked attentively into Prince Vasily's eyes, evidently resolved not to be the first to break the silence, if she had to wait till morning.
Well, you see, my dear princess and cousin, Catherine Semenovna, continued Prince Vasily, returning to his theme, apparently not without an inner struggle. At such a moment as this one must think of everything. One must think of the future, of all of you. I love you all, like children of my own, as you know.
The princess continued to look at him without moving, and with the same dull expression.
I just like that.
Are they in relations?
Oh, you think there's like something going on? I don't think so.
Why is she pointing to the icons?
Pointing to I don't know. I also don't know what he meant when he's like, he pressed her hand down. I was like, where is he pressing it? He's like, we need to talk.
It was a very serious conversation.
I think they're just familial, okay?
Okay, I just don't know what that icons moment was.
I don't know either.
I mean, what do you mean don't make it weird? All these related people are all into each other.
They're all cousins and they're all
Mon cousin.
bunnies. Anyway, and then of course my family was also to be considered, Prince Vasily went on, testily pushing away a little table without looking at her. You know, Katish, that we, you three sisters, Mamatov, and my wife are the Count's only direct heirs. I know how hard it is for you to talk or think of such matters. It is no easier for me. But, my dear, I am getting on for 60, and must be prepared for anything. Do you know I have sent for Pierre? The Count, pointing to his portrait, definitely demanded that he should be called.
Prince Vasily looked questioningly at the princess, but could not make out whether she was considering what he had just said, or whether she was simply looking at him.
I think she's died.
I think she's dead.
There is one thing I constantly pray God to grant, mon cousin, she replied, and it is that he would be merciful to him, and would allow his noble soul peacefully to leave this.
Yes, of course, interrupted Prince Vasily impatiently. She's finally said something. He's like, are you listening? Are you listening? Are you listening? Then she starts talking.
I
he's
just
like,
wanted
yes,
to
yes. Of course, interrupted Prince Vasily impatiently, rubbing his bald head and angrily pulling back towards him the little table that he had pushed away.
Table.
For me. Give me that. But, in short, the fact is, you know yourself that last winter the Count made a will by which he left all his property, not to us, his direct heirs, but to Pierre.
He has made wills enough. Quietly remarked. He has made wills enough. Quietly remarked the princess, but he cannot leave the estate to Pierre. Pierre is illegitimate.
But, my dear, said Prince Vasily suddenly, clutching the little table and becoming more animated. What if a letter had been written to the Emperor in which the Count asks for Pierre's legitimation? Do you understand that in consideration of the Count's services, his request would be granted?
Princess smiled, as people do who think they know more about the subject under discussion than those they are talking with.
I can tell you more,
Of course you can.
continued Prince Vasily, seizing her hand. That letter was written, though it was not sent, and the Emperor knew of it. The only question is, has it been destroyed or not? If not, then as soon as all is over. What? And Prince Vasily sighed to intimate what he meant by the words, all is over. Oh.
JT was confusing.
Yes. And the Count's papers are opened. The will and letter will be delivered to the Emperor, and the petition will certainly be granted. Pierre will get everything as the legitimate son.
And our share? Asked the princess, smiling ironically, as if anything might happen, only not that.
But
it's an interesting line reading.
that's very strange.
It would be hard. If I received that, I would be like, what?
And
our
share. Ironically. Do it. Smile. Smile. Smile ironically.
And our share.
But just not that. But not that. That is the weirdest sentence. But my poor Katish, it is as clear as daylight. He will then be the legal heir to everything, and you won't get anything. You must know, my dear, whether the will and letter were written, and whether they have been destroyed or not. And if they have somehow been overlooked, you ought to know where they are, and must find them, because...
What next? The princess interrupted, smiling sardonically and not changing the expression of her eyes. I'm a woman, and you think we are all stupid, but I know this. An illegitimate son cannot inherit. Une bâtard. Is that, she just...
A bastard.
We know. That's what illegitimate means, she added, as if supposing that this translation of the word would effectively prove to Prince Vasily the invalidity of his contention.
Well, really, Katish, can't you understand? You are so intelligent. How is it you don't see that if the Count has written a letter to the Emperor begging him to recognize Pierre as legitimate, it follows that Pierre will not be Pierre but will become Count Bezhukov and will then inherit everything under the will. And if the will and letter are not destroyed, I feel like we've just been through this.
Okay.
And if the will and letter are
She's a
not...
woman, she doesn't get it.
Listen.
Okay.
If the will
Mhm.
and letter
Mhm.
are not destroyed,
Mhm.
then you will have nothing but the consolation of having been dutiful. Et tout ce qui s'ensuit. That is certain.
I know the will was made, but I also know that it is invalid. And you, mon cousin, seem to consider me a perfect fool, said the princess, with the expression women assume when they suppose they are saying something witty and stinging.
What is this inane conversation they're having?
I don't know, it's over and over and over.
Listen, I have to tell you something.
And she just doesn't remember, like,
She's like,
she's just smiling.
she goes from like checked out
to like flirting with him.
to being like, and then what? And then he's like, are you fucking listening? It's all lost.
But it's invalid.
Cast. That was really good. Cast. Okay.
What?
Oh, stinging.
Mm-hmm.
My dear princess. She's singing. He's saying her whole name. My dear Princess Catherine Semenovna, began Prince Vasily impatiently.
Maybe that's why you call it semen.
Yeah, this is clearly Siemens. This is the first violin's daughter.
But she's a princess.
That's what princesses are. in Russian
the
society.
The first violin is really high up.
It's the very first violin. Do you know that the only bit that my mom watched yesterday was when you were like a date?
Oh my god. That's the best part.
It was literally the best part. Okay. My dear Princess Catherine Semenovna, began Prince Vasily impatiently, I came here not to wrangle with you, but to talk about your interests as with a kinswoman, a good, kind, true relation. And I tell you, for the 10th time, that if the letter to the Emperor and the will in Pierre's favor are among the Count's papers, then, my dear girl, you and your sisters are not heiresses. If you don't believe me, then believe an expert. I have just been talking to Dmitry Onufrich, the family solicitor. And he says the same.
At this, a sudden change evidently took place in the princess's ideas.
What a freaking weird way to say that.
Finally, her thin lips grew white, though her eyes did not change, and her voice, when she began to speak, passed through such transitions as she herself evidently did not expect.
Let's see that.
Okay.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah, let's see that.
Oh, I deserve it. That would be a fine thing, said she. I never wanted anything. And I don't now.
Dog in her lap this whole time.
Well, not anymore, because she's like...
She pushed the little dog off her lap and smoothed her dress.
And this is gratitude. This is recognition for those who have sacrificed everything for his sake, she cried. It's splendid! Fine! I don't want anything, Prince.
This is how I would react.
This is that reaction to the coronavirus. Like,
oh, yeah. Yes, but you are not the only one. There are your sisters, replied Prince Vasily.
But the princess did not listen to him.
Yes, I knew it long ago, but had forgotten. I knew that I could expect nothing but meanness, deceit, envy, intrigue, and ingratitude. The blackest ingratitude in this house.
Do you or do you not know where that will is? Insisted Prince Vasily, his cheeks twitching more than ever.
Yes, I was a fool. I still believed in people, loved them, and sacrificed myself, but only the base, the vile succeed. I know who has been intriguing.
She reminds me of everyone. The princess wished to rise, but the prince held her by the hand. She had the air of one who had suddenly lost faith in the whole human race. She gave her companion an angry glance.
There's still time, my dear. You must remember, Katish, that it was all done casually in a moment of anger, of illness, and was afterwards forgotten. Our duty, my dear, is to rectify his mistake, to ease his last moments by not letting him commit this injustice, and not to let him die feeling that he is rendering unhappy those who
sacrificed everything for him, chimed in the princess, who would again have risen had not the prince still held her fast. So he would never appreciate it? No, mon cousin, she added with a sigh. I shall always remember that in this world one must expect no reward, that in this world there is neither honor nor justice. In this world one has to be cunning and cruel.
Now come, be reasonable. I know you have an excellent heart.
No, I have a wicked heart.
She broke.
She's literally, her brain broke.
I know your heart, repeated the prince. I value your friendship and wish you to have as good an opinion of me. Don't upset yourself and let us talk sensibly while there is still time, be it a day or be it but an hour. Tell me all you know about the will, and above all, where it is. You must know.
What is it that you want? What are you looking for?
Where the will
Yes. Which will?
You must know. We will take it at once and show it to the Count. He has no doubt forgotten it. And
I
will
thought
wish
he's
to
dead.
destroy it. No, he's almost dead.
Bezhukov, I thought, was just dead.
Almost dead.
Oh.
He had a stroke. He's
A
almost
sixth
dead.
stroke.
Sixth stroke.
Okay.
No one ever lives.
So there's no time. There's
He's
no
dying.
time.
There's no time. No time for this. Where's the will? We will take it to Count.
Okay.
He will destroy it.
Okay.
You understand that my sole desire is conscientiously to carry out his wishes.
Doesn't seem like that.
No, it is. It is. These aren't his wishes. That is my only reason for being here. I came simply to help him and you.
Now I see it all. I know who has been intriguing. I know, cried the princess.
That is not the point, my dear.
It's that protege of yours, that sweet princess Drubetskaya, that Anna Mikhailovna, whom I would not take for a housemaid, the infamous vile woman.
Do not let us lose any time.
Ah, don't talk to me. Last winter, she wheedled herself in here and told the Count such vile, disgraceful things about us, especially about Sophie. I can't repeat them. That it made the Count quite ill, and he would not see us for a whole fortnight. I know it was then he wrote this vile, infamous paper, but I thought the thing was invalid.
We've got to it at last. Why did you not tell me about it sooner?
It's in the inlaid portfolio that he keeps under his pillow. Said ignoring his I have a sin, a great sin. It is hatred for that vile woman, almost shrieked the princess, now quite changed. And what does she come worming herself in here for? But I will give her a piece of my mind. The time will come.
That scene.
That's a good scene. I feel like I just got on board with War and Peace just now.
That's what it's about. That's more of the war
Now
I
that,
was looking for.
yeah, that's more like it.
Yeah.
It only took us 160 pages.
Yeah, we got there.
Yeah.
Honestly, though, I feel like I would want to see that scene filmed in its entirety, just to see someone have to deal with that.
You just did.
Oh, good. I can watch it back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really good performance. Excellent.
I agree.
Very high notes, very low notes. So dynamic, but grounded. I really believed you had a dog in your lap.
And I you. I hope the time comes for whatever her name is, Katish.
Yeah.
To
To exact revenge.
Yeah.
Me too.
This is like the first conflict that there's been.
Kind of. Everything's been pretty easy so far.
It's been really Chekhovian.
It's been like, oh, Natasha wants ice cream.
But what flavor? No, Mama, I do not like carrot. You think it really took 159 pages? Yeah.
We have to establish the world.
You'll notice that when I posted on Instagram, I didn't tag War and Peace just in case anyone actually feels strongly about it.
Watches
it. It's like,
hey,
what the?
Hey, excuse me.
Yeah.
Do you know anyone who's like, my favorite book is War and Peace?
I barely know anyone who's read it. At least that I know of.
I feel it's that answer that
You guys read this book.
Male writers will say is their favorite book. War and Peace. Like, after that, what was the point of writing?
So then why are you writing, smart male writer?
I don't know. Why are you writing? Answer us.
Do you think smart male writers are in this thing?
Yeah, definitely. They'll find it. They know where to stick their noses in.
Where to find the deals?
It'd be really weird if this became like a black market trading outpost.
Like the pirate Tides Bay or whatever.
Yeah.
The Silk Road.
What an undercover operation. Like, this would be where to hide it, you know?
It would be so covert.
I was just thinking of it.
Like, what is the last place there would be
Some-
dark web freaking trading?
Right, some random person's live stream of War and Peace. But like War and Peace, you know? Like trade. I don't know. I was trying to make that work. I thought it was
No,
code for
I think you should
something.
stick with it.
Yeah. War and Peace. War. and Peace.
I can't make it work.
No.
I tried in my mind. 22?
22.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm quite thrilled.
I'm excited. What's gonna happen?
Finally, I want to know.
Someone's gonna die. I mean, yes, he's gonna die. What do we think's gonna happen? Are they gonna get to him in time? I don't think so.
Who, Bazhukov?
Yeah, I think he's gonna die and the money's gonna go to Pierre.
I think the money making its way to Pierre is probably like this feels like a primary conflict. I don't know if there's one.
Pierre can't get the money.
He's just gonna buy every bit.
I like that he's so awkward, but he's still a prankster.
You love Pierre?
I'm very confused by his character. Like, apparently we really like him. But
What do you mean apparently we really like him?
I feel like it's...
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought
Everyone's like, how amusing.
no,
Animal
people are like, this is so
cruelty.
inappropriate.
No, I think they just like a good story. I think it's funny that he's awkward, but then doing these outrageous things. Like, he seems to not care at all what people think of him.
Right.
He's like Michael Cera.
You think Michael Cera doesn't care what people think of him? I thought he
No,
was
not
like
really.
cripplingly. Oh, I mean,
But then he would try to cover his awkwardness, and he does not. He like leans hard in.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
In that BBC version, it's what's his name? Pierre's played by. What's his name?
Who?
Did you recognize him?
Yes. Paul something.
Yeah.
Is that his name?
He's in like Swiss Army Man.
Dano.
There we go.
Oh, can't believe I guessed something right.
Lugan is like, oh, you're supposed to feel like bad for him or sweetness towards him, you know?
James Norton does not play Boris.
Oh, who is it?
Someone we've not met yet.
Ooh, there's a new character.
I mean, this feels a little bit like cheating.
Oh,
Spoiler,
Andrei
only for us.
Volkonsky. Oh, that's Prince Andrew.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, what did you see him?
He's married. He's the one who was like, women are stupid. We forgot to mention his character, Prince Andrew, who is married to another princess and hates women.
Is he the one that that Boris's mother appealed to?
No,
that was
she appealed
Vasily.
to Vasily. Prince Andrew is Pierre's friend.
Pierre's friend.
He's going to war, and his wife is pregnant. And she's like, "Don't go to war."
And he's like,
And
next.
it's like, yeah, pretty much. He's like, "Go to war."
And then he's like, don't ever get married.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool. I feel so on top of it now. 22.
Look, I hit my reading streak.
Wow. What's your longest streak?
2 days.
I feel like it kept that application that I never used, that app, kept congratulating me. Oh, you've read 3 pages.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this?
He really wants to encourage you.
Yeah. 22. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
While these conversations were going on in the reception room and the princess's room, a carriage containing Pierre, who had been sent for, and Anna Mikhailovna, who found it necessary to accompany him, was driving into the court of Count Bezhukov's house. As the wheels rolled softly over the straw beneath the windows, Anna Mikhailovna, having turned with words of comfort to her companion, realized that he was asleep in his corner and woke him up. Rousing himself, Pierre followed Anna Mikhailovna out of the carriage and only then began to think of the interview with his dying father which awaited him. He noticed that they had not come to the front entrance but to the back door. While he was getting down from the carriage steps, 2 men, who looked like tradespeople, ran hurriedly from the entrance and hid in the shadow of the wall. Pausing for a moment, Pierre noticed several other men of the same kind hiding in the shadow of the house on both sides. But neither Anna Mikhailovna nor the footman nor the coachman, who could not help seeing these people, took any notice of them. It seems to be all right, Pierre concluded, and followed Anna Mikhailovna. She hurriedly ascended the narrow, dimly lit stone staircase, calling to Pierre, who was lagging behind, to follow. Though he did not see why it was necessary for him to go to the count at all, still less why he had to go by the back stairs, yet, judging by Anna Mikhailovna's air of assurance and haste, Pierre concluded that it was all absolutely necessary. Halfway up the stairs, carrying pails, came running downstairs, their boots clattering. These men pressed close to the wall to let Pierre and Anna Mikhailovna pass, and did not evince the least surprise at seeing them there.
Is this the way to the princess's apartments? Asked Anna Mikhailovna of one of them.
Yes, replied a footman in a bold, loud voice, as if anything were now permissible. The door to the left, ma'am.
Perhaps the count did not ask for me, said Pierre, when he reached the landing. I better go to my own room.
Anna Mikhailovna paused and waited for him to come up.
Oh, my friend, she said, touching his arm, as she had done her son's when speaking to him that afternoon. Believe me, I suffer no less than you do, but be a man.
But really, hadn't I better go away? He asked, looking kindly at her over his spectacles.
Oh, my dear friend, forget the wrongs that may have been done you. Think that he is your father, perhaps in the agony of death, she sighed. I have loved you like a son from the first. Trust yourself to me, Pierre. I shall not forget your interests.
Pierre did not understand a word, but the conviction that all this had to be grew stronger, and he meekly followed Anna Mikhailovna, who was already opening a door.
This door led into a back anteroom. An old man, a servant of the princess's, sat in a corner knitting a stocking. Pierre had never been in this part of the house, and did not even know of the existence of these rooms. Anna Mikhailovna, addressing a maid who was hurrying past with a decanter on a tray as "my dear" and "my sweet," asked about the princess's health, and then led Pierre along a stone passage. The first door on the left led into the princess's apartments. The maid, with the decanter in her haste, had not closed the door. Everything in the house was done in haste at that time, and Pierre and Anna Mikhailovna, in passing, instinctively glanced into the room, where Prince Vasily and the eldest princess were sitting close together talking. Seeing them pass, Prince Vasily drew back with obvious impatience, while the princess jumped up and with a gesture of desperation slammed the door with all her might.
That's not at all sketchy. This action was so unlike her usual composure, and the fear depicted on Prince Vasily's face so out of keeping with his dignity that Pierre stopped and glanced inquiringly over his spectacles at his guide. Anna Mikhailovna evinced no surprise. She only smiled faintly and sighed, as if to say that this was no more than she had expected.
Be a man, my friend. I will look after your interests, said she, in reply to his look, and went still faster along the passage.
This relationship was forged mighty quickly.
Yeah, she's just like, you are my friend, now be a man.
And didn't they just meet?
Oh, and she was like hushing him all that. Right?
She wasn't hushing him.
No, isn't she the one who, chapter 1, there's a party, and she's like, oh no, Pierre's gonna say something. Yeah, I think so.
I'm not really. trying to do it so quietly.
Here, you have a big thing to read.
Oh.
Yeah, you can check. Oh no, you're right. Anna Pavlovna.
See, what happened to that
Okay,
woman?
I don't know. We lost her. So, right, and Anna Mikhailovna was sitting next to, like, you know how it's like, oh, there's a nice old lady that everyone says hi to, and then there's another
Yes.
next to her, tear stained.
That tear-stained Anna Mikhailovna.
Right.
See, there's so many people with the same bloody names. Okay, ready? Pierre could not make out what it was all about, and still less what watching over his interests meant. But he decided that all these things had to be. He's checked out today. He's got all these political opinions about every single thing. But like right now, he's like, whatever. Oh, maybe it's that.
His father's dying.
Yeah.
I mean,
He's on
Batard.
Batard. Totally. How could I not have thought about this? Okay. From the passage, they went into a large, dimly lit room adjoining the Count's reception room. It was one of those sumptuous but cold apartments known to Pierre only from the front approach, but even in this room there now stood an empty bath, and water had been spilled on the carpet. They were met by a deacon with a censer and by a servant who passed out on tiptoe without heeding them. They went into the reception room, familiar to Pierre, with 2 Italian windows opening into the conservatory, with its large bust and full-length portrait of Catherine the Great. The same people were still sitting here in almost the same positions as before, whispering to one another. All became silent and entered, and at the big stout figure of Pierre, who, hanging his head, meekly followed her.
Anna Mikhailovna's face expressed a conscientiousness that the decisive moment had arrived. With an air of practical Petersburg lady, she now, keeping Pierre close beside her, entered the room even more boldly than that afternoon. She felt that as she brought with her the person the dying man wished to see, her own admission was assured. Casting a rapid glance at all those in the room and noticing the Count's confessor there, she glided up to him with a sort of amble, not exactly bowing, yet seeming to grow suddenly smaller, and respectfully received the blessing first of one and then of another priest.
God be thanked that you are in time, said she to one of the priests. All we relatives have been in such anxiety. This young man is the Count's son, she added more softly. What a terrible moment.
Having said this, she went up to the doctor.
Dear doctor, said she, this young man is the Count's son. Is there any hope?
The doctor cast a rapid glance upwards and silently shrugged his shoulders. Anna Mikhailovna, with just the same movement, raised her shoulders and eyes, almost closing the latter, sighed, and moved away from the doctor to Pierre. To him, in a particularly respectful and tenderly sad voice, she said,
Trust in his mercy. And pointing out a small sofa for him to sit and wait for her, she went silently toward the door that everyone was watching, and creaked very slightly as she disappeared behind it.
Pierre, having made up his mind to obey his monitress implicitly, moved toward the sofa she had indicated. As soon as Anna Mikhailovna had disappeared, he noticed that the eyes of all in the room turned to him with something more than curiosity and sympathy. He noticed that they whispered to one another, casting significant looks at him with a kind of awe and even servility. A deference such as he had never before received was shown him. A strange lady, the one who had been talking to the priest, rose and offered him her seat. An aide-de-camp picked up and returned a glove Pierre had dropped. The doctors became respectfully silent as he passed by, and moved to make way for him. At first, Pierre wished to take another seat so as not to trouble the lady, and also to pick up the glove himself and to pass round the doctors who were not even in his way. But all at once he felt that this would not do, and that tonight he was a person obliged to perform some sort of awful rite which everyone expected of him, and that he was therefore bound to accept their services. He took the glove in silence from the aide-de-camp, and sat down in the lady's chair, placing his huge hands symmetrically on his knees in the naive attitude of an Egyptian statue, and decided in his own mind that all was as it should be, and that in order not to lose his head and do foolish things, he must not act on his own ideas tonight, but must yield himself up entirely to the will of those who were guiding him.
Not 2 minutes had passed before Prince Vasily, with head erect, majestically entered the room. He was wearing his long coat with 3 stars on his breast. He seemed to have grown thinner since the morning. His eyes seemed larger than usual when he glanced around and noticed Pierre. He went up to him, took his hand, a thing he never used to do, and drew it downward. Okay, I don't know what that is.
Like, what would it be? Give me your hand. Like, is it just... Oh.
Like what Trump does, where he's like...
Yeah, maybe it's that. I think so.
That's very strict. Like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of lost my spot.
Oh. And drew it down as if wishing to...
As if wishing to ascertain whether it was firmly fixed on.
Okay.
Courage, courage, my friend. He has asked to see you. That is well. And he turned to go.
But Pierre thought it necessary to ask, how is... and hesitated, not knowing whether it would be proper to call the dying man the Count, yet ashamed to call him father.
He had another stroke about a half hour ago. Courage, my friend.
Pierre's mind was in such a confused state that the word stroke suggested to him a blow from something. He looked at Prince Vasily in perplexity, and only later grasped that a stroke was an attack of illness. Prince Vasily said something to Lorraine in passing and went through the door on tiptoe. He could not walk well on tiptoe, and his whole body jerked at each step. What do you think that looks like?
I don't know. Beep, 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 beep.
Jerked?
Yeah. So he's like... He's falling over. That's why I'm like, who is this guy?
Vasily?
Oh wait, I thought this is Pierre.
No.
Oh. Isn't it? No. Oh, okay.
The eldest princess followed him, and the priests and deacons and some servants also went in at the door. Through that door was heard a noise of things being moved about, and at last Anna Mikhailovna, still with the same expression, pale but resolute in the discharge of duty, ran out, and touching Pierre lightly on the arm, said,
The divine mercy is inexhaustible. Unction is about to be administered. Come.
Pierre went in at the door, stepping on the soft carpet, and noticed that the strange lady, the aide-de-camp, and some of the servants all followed him in, as if there were now no further need for permission to enter that room.
One wants to see the unction.
The unction.
Quite an event. Okay, chapter 23. Pierre well knew this large room divided by columns, and behind the columns with a high silk curtained mahogany bedstead on one side, and on the other an immense case containing icons was brightly illuminated with red light like a Russian church during evening service. Under the gleaming icons stood a long invalid chair, and in that chair, on snowy white smooth pillows, evidently freshly changed, Pierre saw, covered to the waist by a bright green quilt, the familiar, majestic figure of his father, Count Bezukov, with that gray mane of hair above his broad forehead which reminded one of a lion, and the deep, characteristically noble wrinkles of his handsome, ruddy face. He lay just under the icons, his large, thick hands outside the quilt. Into the right hand, which was lying palm downwards, a wax taper had been thrust between forefinger and thumb, and an old servant, bending over from behind the chair, held it in position. By the chair stood the priests, their long hair falling over their magnificent glittering vestments, with lighted tapers in their hands, slowly and solemnly conducting the service. A little behind them stood the 2 younger princesses, holding handkerchiefs to their eyes, and just in front of them, their eldest sister, Katish, with a vicious and determined look, steadily fixed on the icons, as though declaring to all that she could not answer for herself should she glance around. Anna Mikhailovna, with a meek, sorrowful, and all-forgiving expression on her face, stood by the door near the strange lady. Prince Vasily, in front of the door, near the invalid chair, a wax taper in his left hand, was leaning his left arm on the carved back of a velvet chair he had turned round for the purpose, and was crossing himself with his right hand, turning his eyes upward each time he touched his forehead. His face wore a calm look of piety and resignation to the will of God. If you do not understand these sentiments, he seemed to be saying, so much the worse for you.
Behind him stood the aide-de-camp, the doctors and the men servants. The men and women had separated as in church. All were silently crossing themselves, and the reading of the church service, the subdued chanting of deep bass voices, and in the intervals sighs and the shuffling of feet were the only sounds that could be heard. Anna Mikhailovna, with an air of importance that showed she felt she quite knew what she was about, went across the room to where Pierre was standing and gave him a taper. He lit it, and distracted by observing those around him, began crossing himself with the hand that held the taper.
Sophie, the rosy, laughter-loving youngest princess with the mole, remember her?
I remember her mole, that's for sure.
Watched him. She smiled, hid her face in her handkerchief, and remained with it hidden for a while. Then looking up and seeing Pierre, she again began to laugh. Why is she laughing? Inappropriate. She evidently felt unable to look at him without laughing, but could not resist looking at him. So, to be out of temptation, she slipped quietly behind one of the columns. In the midst of the service, the voices of the priests suddenly ceased. They whispered to one another, and the old servant who was holding the count's hand got up and said something to the ladies. Anna Mikhailovna stepped backward and, stooping over the dying man, beckoned to Lorraine from behind her back. The French doctor held no taper. He was leaning against one of the columns in a respectful attitude, implying that he, a foreigner, in spite of all differences of faith, understood the full importance of the rite now being performed and even approved of it. He now approached the sick man with the noiseless step of one in full vigor of life. With his delicate white fingers raised from the green quilt to the hand that was free, and turning sideways felt the pulse and reflected a moment. The sick man was given something to drink. There was a stir around him. Then the people resumed their places and the service continued. During this interval, Pierre noticed that Prince Vasily left the chair on which he had been leaning and, with an air which intimated that he knew what he was about, and if others did not understand him, it was so much the worse for them, did not go up to the dying man, but passed by him, joined the eldest princess, and moved with her to the side of the room where stood the high bedstead with its silken hangings. On leaving the bed, both Prince Vasily and the princess passed out by a back door, but returned to their places one after the other before the service was concluded. Prince paid no more attention to this occurrence. Pierre paid no more attention to this occurrence than to the rest of what went on, having made up his mind once for all that what he saw happening around him that evening was in some way essential.
The chanting of the service was heard the dying man having received the sacrament. The dying man lay as lifeless and immovable as before. Around him everyone began to stir. Steps were audible and whispers, among which Anna Mikhailovna's was the most distinct.
Pierre heard her say,
"Certainly he must be moved onto the bed. Here it will be impossible."
The sick man was so surrounded by doctors, princesses, and servants that Pierre could no longer see the reddish-yellow face with its gray mane, which, though he saw other faces as well, he had not lost sight of for a single moment during the whole service. He judged by the cautious movements of those who crowded round the invalid chair that they had lifted the dying man and were moving him.
"Catch hold of my arm or you'll drop him," he heard one of the servants say in a frightened whisper. "Catch hold from underneath here," exclaimed different voices, and the heavy breathing of the bearers and the shuffling of their feet grew more hurried, as if the weight they were carrying were too much for them.
As the bearers, among whom was Anna Mikhailovna, passed the young man, he caught a momentary glimpse between their heads and backs of the dying man's high, stout, uncovered chest and powerful shoulders, raised by those who were holding him under the armpits, and of his gray, curly, leonine head. This head, with its remarkably broad brow and cheekbones, its handsome, sensual mouth, and its cold, majestic expression, was not disfigured by the approach of death. It was the same as Pierre remembered it 3 months before, when the Count had sent him to Petersburg. But now this head was swaying helplessly with the uneven movements of the bearers, and the cold, listless gaze fixed itself on nothing.
After a few minutes' bustle beside the high bedstead, those who had carried the sick man dispersed. Anna Mikhailovna touched Pierre's hand and said, "Come." Pierre went with her to the bed on which the sick man had been laid in a stately pose in keeping with the ceremony just completed. He lay with his head propped high on the pillows. His hands were symmetrically placed on the green silk quilt, the palms downward. When Pierre came up, the Count was gazing straight at him, but with a look, the significance of which could not be understood by mortal man. Either this look meant nothing, but that as long as one has eyes, they must look somewhere, or it meant too much. Pierre hesitated, not knowing what to do, and glanced inquiringly at his guide. Anna Mikhailovna made a hurried sign with her eyes, glancing at the sick man's hand and moving her lips as if to send it a kiss. Pierre, carefully stretching his neck so as not to touch the quilt, followed her suggestion and pressed his lips to the large, boned, fleshy hand. Neither the hand nor a single muscle of the Count's face stirred. Once more, Pierre looked questioningly at Anna Mikhailovna to see what he was to do next. Anna Mikhailovna, with her eyes, indicated a chair that stood beside the bed. Pierre obediently sat down, his eyes asking if he were doing right. Anna Mikhailovna nodded approvingly. Again, Pierre fell into the naively symmetrical pose of an Egyptian statue, evidently distressed that his stout and clumsy body took up so much room, and doing his utmost to look as small as possible. He looked at the Count, who still gazed at the spot where Pierre's face had been before he sat down. Anna Mikhailovna indicated by her attitude her consciousness of the pathetic importance of these last moments of meeting between the father and son. This lasted about 2 minutes, which to Pierre seemed an hour. Suddenly the broad muscles and lines of the Count's face began to twitch. The twitching increased. The handsome mouth was drawn to one side. Only now did Pierre realize how near death his father was, and from that distorted mouth issued an indistinct, hoarse sound. Anna Mikhailovna looked attentively at the sick man's eyes, trying to guess what he wanted. She pointed first to Pierre, then to some drink, then named Prince Vasily in an inquiring whisper, then pointed to the quilt. The eyes and face of the sick man showed impatience. He made an effort to look at the servant who stood constantly at the head of the bed. Once
turn on the other side, whispered the servant, and got up to turn the Count's heavy body toward the wall.
Pierre rose to help him.
While the Count was being turned over, one of his arms fell back helplessly, and he made a fruitless effort to pull it forward. Whether he noticed the look of terror with which Pierre regarded that lifeless arm, or whether some other thought flitted across his dying brain, at any rate, he glanced at the refractory arm, at Pierre's terror-stricken face, and again at the arm, and on his face a feeble, piteous smile appeared, quite out of keeping with his features, that seemed to deride his own helplessness. At sight expected quivering in his breast, a tickling in his nose, and tears dimmed his eyes. The sick man was turned on to his side, with his face to the wall. He sighed.
"He's dozing," said Anna Mikhailovna, observing that one of the princesses was coming to take her turn of watching. "Let us go."
Pierre went out.
This is not a party.
Not a party. But
This
they
is
were
not a
just
party.
having a party.
Yeah, they literally just came from.
That's like quite an orchestration having to move a dying man. Like it seems very. If you're dying, that's a lot of things to go through.
I just couldn't tell if you meant the people who were moving him or.
I mean, like before, we have like a crowd around him. They're like, ooh, there's like a concert going on.
He's very important. What should we do?
You want to keep going?
Yeah, I'm gonna be hungry soon. Oh!
Let's keep going for that. Let's get to when he dies.
Oh! You don't know how long that's gonna take.
What?
I'm surprised he's still going.
True. Okay.
Chapter 24. There was now no one in the reception room except Prince Vasily and the eldest princess, who were sitting under the portrait of Catherine the Great and talking eagerly. As soon as they saw Pierre and his companion, they became silent, and Pierre thought he saw the princess hide something as she whispered,
Can't bear the sight of that woman.
Katish has had tea served in the small drawing room, said Prince Vasily to Anna Mikhailovna. Go and take something, my poor Anna Mikhailovna, or you will not hold out.
To Pierre he said nothing, merely giving his arm a sympathetic squeeze below the shoulder. Pierre went with Anna Mikhailovna into the small drawing room.
There was nothing so refreshing after a sleepless night as a cup of this delicious Russian tea. Lorraine was saying with an air of restrained animation as he stood sipping tea from a delicate Chinese handleless cup before a table on which tea and a cold supper were laid in the small circular room. Around the table, all who were at Count Bezhukov's house that night had gathered to fortify themselves. Pierre well remembered the small circular drawing room with its mirrors and little tables. During balls given at the house, Pierre, who did not know how to dance, had liked sitting in this room to watch the ladies who, as they passed through in their ball dresses with diamonds and pearls on their bare shoulders, looked at themselves in the brilliantly lighted mirrors which repeated their reflections several times. Now the same room was dimly lighted by 2 candles. On one small table, tea things and supper dishes stood in disorder, and in the middle of the night a motley throng of people sat there, not merrymaking, but somberly whispering and betraying by every word and movement that they none of them forgot what was happening and what was about to happen in the bedroom. Pierre did not eat anything, though he would very much have liked to. He looked inquiringly at his monitress and saw that she was again going on tiptoe to the reception room where they had left Prince Vasily and the eldest princess. Pierre concluded that this also was essential, and after a short interval followed her. Anna Mikhailovna was standing beside the princess, and they were both speaking in excited whispers.
Permit me, princess, to know what is necessary and what is not necessary, said the younger of the 2 speakers, evidently in the same excitement as when she had slammed the door of her room.
My dear princess, answered Anna Mikhailovna blandly but impressively, blocking the way to the bedroom and preventing the other from passing. Won't this be too much for poor uncle at a movement when he needs repose? Worldly conversation at a moment when his soul is already prepared.
Prince Vasily was seated in an easy chair in his familiar attitude, with one leg crossed high above the other. His cheeks, which were so flabby that they looked heavier below, were twitching violently. But he wore the air of a man little concerned in what the 2 ladies were saying.
Come, my dear Anna Mikhailovna, let Katish do as she pleases. You know how fond the Count is of her.
I don't even know what is in this paper, said the younger of the 2 ladies, addressing Prince Vasily and pointing to an inlaid portfolio she held in her hand. All I know is that his real will is in his writing table, and this is a paper. God,
Yeah, but the latter sprang so...
I know, my dear kind Princess, said Anna Mikhailovna, seizing the portfolio so firmly that it was plain she would not let go easily. Dear princess, I beg and implore you, have some pity on him. Je vous en conjure.
The princess did not reply. Their efforts in the struggle for the portfolio were the only sounds audible. But it was evident that if the princess did speak, her words would not be flattering to Anna Mikhailovna. Though the latter held on tenaciously, her voice lost none of its honeyed firmness and softness.
Pierre, my dear, come here. I think you will not be out of place in a family consultation. Is it not so, Prince?
Why don't you speak, cousin? Suddenly shrieked the princess.
Excuse me. Why don't you speak, cousin? Suddenly shrieked the princess so loud that those in the drawing room heard her and were startled. Why do you remain silent when heaven knows who permits herself to interfere, making a scene on the very threshold of a dying man's room? Intriguer, she hissed viciously, and tugged with all her might at the portfolio.
But Anna Mikhailovna went forward a step or 2 to keep her hold on the portfolio and changed her grip.
Prince Vasily rose. Oh, said he with reproach and surprise. This is absurd. Come, let go, I tell you.
The princess let go.
And you too.
But Anna Mikhailovna did not obey him.
Let go, I tell you. I will take the responsibility. I myself will go and ask him. Does that satisfy you?
But, Prince, said Anna Mikhailovna, after such a solemn sacrament, allow him a moment's peace. Here, Pierre, Tell him your opinion, said she, turning to the young man, who, having come quite close, was gazing with astonishment at the angry face of the princess, which had lost all dignity, and at the twitching cheeks of Prince Vasily.
Remember that you will answer for the consequences, said Prince Vasily severely. You don't know what you are doing.
Vile woman! Shouted the princess, darting unexpectedly at Anna Mikhailovna and snatching the portfolio from her.
Prince Vasily bent his head and spread out his hands.
At this moment, that terrible door which Pierre had watched so long and which had always opened so quickly burst noisily open and banged against the wall, and the second of the three sisters rushed out, wringing her hands.
What are you doing? She cried vehemently. He is dying and you leave me alone with him.
Her sister dropped the portfolio. Anna Mikhailovna, stooping, quickly caught up the object of contention and ran into the bedroom. The eldest princess and Prince Vasily, recovering themselves, followed her. A few minutes later, the eldest sister came out with a pale, hard face, again biting her underlip. At sight of Pierre, her expression showed an irrepressible hatred.
Yes, now you may be glad, said she. This is what you have been waiting for. And bursting into tears, she hid her face in her handkerchief and rushed from the room.
Prince Vasily came next. He staggered to the sofa on which Pierre was sitting and dropped into it, covering his face with his hand. Pierre noticed that he was pale and that his jaw quivered and shook as if in ague. Like accent aigu.
Yeah. Ah, my friend, said he, taking Pierre by the elbow, and there was in his voice a sincerity and weakness Pierre had never observed in it before. How often we sin, how much we deceive, and all for what? I am near 60, dear friend. I, too. All will end with death. All. Death is awful. And he burst into tears.
Anna Mikhailovna came out last. She approached Pierre with slow, quiet steps.
Pierre, she said.
Pierre gave her an inquiring look. She kissed the young man on his forehead, wetting him with her tears again. Then, after a pause, she said,
Yes, no more.
Pierre looked at her over his spectacles.
Come, I will go with you. Try to weep. Nothing gives such relief as tears.
No. She drinks water in a jar. This person very again. Yeah. Good. Interesting. Is it?
It's like they're studying us like zoo animals.
Yeah, little thing.
Look at her drinking water.
She drank it again. She led him into the dark drawing room, and Pierre was glad no one could see his face. Anna Mikhailovna left him, and when she returned, he was fast asleep with his head on his arm.
In the morning, Anna Mikhailovna said to Pierre,
Yes, my dear, this is a great loss for us all, not to speak of you, but God will support you. You are young, and are now, I hope, in command of an immense fortune. The will has not yet been opened. I know you well enough to be sure that this will not turn your head, but it imposes on you. I may tell you, my dear boy, that if I had not been there, God only knows what would have happened. You know, Uncle promised me only the day before yesterday not to forget Boris. But he had no time. I hope, my dear friend, you will carry out your father's wish.
Pierre understood nothing of all this, and coloring shyly, looked in silence at Princess Anna Mikhailovna. After her talk with Pierre, Anna Mikhailovna returned to the Rostovs and went to bed. On waking in the morning, she told the Rostovs and all her acquaintances the details of Count Bezhukov's death.
That's so weird.
Interesting. It's been so accurate up to
I
now.
know.
She said the Count had died as she would herself wish to die, and that his end was not only touching, but edifying. As to the last meeting between father and son, it was so touching that she could not think of it without tears, and did not know which had behaved better during those awful moments. The father, who so remembered everything and everybody at last, and had spoken such pathetic words to the son, or Pierre, whom it had been pitiful to see, so stricken was he with grief, though he tried hard to hide it in order not to sadden his dying father. It is painful, but it does one good.
It uplifts the soul to see such men as the old count and his worthy son, said she. Of the behavior of the eldest princess and of Prince Vasily she spoke disapprovingly, but in whispers, and as a great secret.
Ah.
Dun, 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 dun.
Pierre's rich! He's rich!
Hey! Hey! Hey!
We are not rich, we drink from jars.
Did they speak at all, though? There weren't a lot of words spoken between them, unless they skimmed over that.
Who?
Pierre and his father.
No, nothing.
Yeah.
But she, I think, has the will. She retained the will.
Mm-hmm.
She won.
Nicolovna?
Yeah.
She's crafty, though.
She's extreme crafty, but also very earnest, it seems.
So facile with her emotions.
I know, she's like, cry. It feels good.
Try to weep if you can. They do that. Do the Russians do that?
What?
Like, what's it called when you keen? You know what that is?
I thought I did, but now I don't.
Keening
I thought it
is
was a
like-
sound.
Yeah, but it's like to elicit crying.
Is
So you
it?
like get together as a group and you go, ah, ah.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Mhm.
Too easy, huh? Oh yeah, see, I thought it was this.
Keen. A wailing lament for the dead. Yeah. I don't know how long they do it for. That's Irish, and then I think there's something similar, like in different cultures with different names.
Aspect of doing it to elicit emotion.
She's trying to flutter in her.
Hmm?
I still find
She
it funny.
drank water in her jar again. Or did it? I'll do it more.
Feeling good about today's reading?
I do. What do you?
Yeah, we could stop.
We did 10-ish chapters.
Yeah. We're almost done book 1.
Oh!
Yeah.
Having a book from home?
15?
Okay. This is so doable.
That's not bad. We're on page 249 in this. It's going quite different.
I mean, I know. It's so weird because I thought we literally
It's the same copy.
needed to make it the same.
I know, but you remember I tried to find it?
I thought you did. You didn't?
It looked the same, just with slightly different fonts. Like mine doesn't have that little
Right.
this scribble.
But it's weird that it was pretty consistent this whole time because I don't remember any time that you started reading that I was like, what?
It's my turn.
That I was confused by. Strange. I suggest you buy a glass. There are many glasses here. But I like these. And I think that's it.
I would
What's the
suggest-
difference between a
I
jar
would
and a
suggest
glass?
she did buy a glass. It's just it once contained foodstuffs.
Yeah. I don't really know what the difference is between a jar and a glass.
Well, let's discuss.
What is it? The jar comes with a top, but like
Glass, but anything made of glass.
no, because you can have a plastic glass. Yeah, you can. What do you call
That's
those
a cup.
cups?
Cup.
I don't know. Don't be upset about the draw. Don't be sad.
Okay. I think we're good.
We're good.
Yeah. We're going to finish book 1 soon.
On the morrow.
On the morrow. Tune in next time.
Hope you guys are doing well and are safe.
Yeah. Press a button.
Okay.
Hit a button.
Bye.